It's a sure thing. Change, change. Expect a miracle change. Watch me change when you change the way you look at things. The things you look at change. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. Now do 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 change. Do 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 change. Do 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 change. Do 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 do.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are coming from. We're hoping you're having a great day. My name is Cheryl Rogers, and it is my honor and my privilege to host Spirit Cafe show, co-host, with my wonderful co-host, Barbara Schreiner-Trudell.
Hi, everybody.
And before we start, Barbara, I'm just going to acknowledge that we work, live, and play on the historical and traditional territory of many First Nations. And as we gather on Turtle Island, we as settlers are grateful for the opportunity to meet here. And we thank all the generations of people who have taken care of this land for thousands of years. And this includes the Métis, Inuit, and all other Indigenous people. Also acknowledging that as we continue to grow and expand on these lands, there is still unresolved and dangerous inequality and discrimination towards our BIPOC and 2S LGBTQ plus family. By making these acknowledgements, we strive to be allies and take an active part in reconciliation. We realize our history and we choose to create a new reality. We are one.
Thank you, Cheryl. And we have a remarkable guest today, the founder, the creator of the New Thought Media Network. Whoo! No, I should have a little applause machine here. Reverend Robert holds a master's in consciousness studies and is an ordained minister with religious science, considers himself a lifelong student of transformational leadership. He's currently the spiritual and creative director of the New Thought Media Network, a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment. And we just love this. Robert is also passionate about exploring the emerging experience of virtual community and spiritual activism. Beyond the virtual classroom, Robert is a creator and feels called to serve those seeking to create the life they truly desire. He is a dynamic spiritual leader, passionate firebrand speaker and teacher, as well as a personal coach, spiritual business consultant, and thought leader that continually finds ways to share the New Thought philosophy in paradigm-shifting ways. Welcome, Robert. Rev Robert, we're so glad you're here. Welcome, welcome. And today we're going to talk about trans rights or lack of them in the US and what's going on here in Canada as well. So, Rev Robert, can you sort of fill us in a little bit on what's happening south of our border?
Yes, absolutely. And I want to say thank you for having me on the program today. It's always as the visionary and driving force, let's say, of this network. It's always great when somebody says, "Hey, you want to come on my show?" He's like, "I don't want to come on your show."
And we're so grateful to have you and that you took the time, Rev Robert.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. So, and I want to start off today by just recognizing that in this philosophy of New Thought, we teach a philosophy of oneness. We teach that we're all part of this one thing called life. And whether you want to call that life or God or Buddha or Allah or Vishnu or Kuan Yin or source energy or whatever you want to call it, it's all this oneness. And we're all part of that. And what I see happening right now, specifically in the United States, and we're going to talk a little bit about some of what's happening in Canada as well, and what we know is happening in Europe as well. When we look at trans rights, I think we have to recognize that they're human rights.
Yes.
And unfortunately, the prevailing wind, if you will, in America is we don't understand, and so we're afraid.
Yes.
And because of that fear, because we're afraid that you being you and you being authentic to who you are might somehow make me less of who I am, well, that's just bunk. That's hooey. I have the unique experience of raising a couple of transgender teens right now. Now, as parents, that's can be a shock when your teen comes to you. And our eldest came to us at 13. So we're 5 years, just about 5 years into this now, into this experience. They're going to turn 18 in just another month and a half, couple months. And it's a learning process that you're not any different than the person I raised. You look different. You're not wearing the same clothes I thought you would be wearing at this point in your life. There are expectations that I had that won't happen in the way I anticipated, but it's not my life. And I don't get to live my kid's life. And that experience, so I would have called myself an ally before my eldest came out to us in this way. And the last 5 years have forced me to be an even more vocal ally and to be an even more active ally, not just talking about it, but showing up, but embracing. And I'll tell you, I'm like most parents, I'm incredibly proud of my kids. Incredibly proud that they're being who they came here to be. I do have my own concerns sometimes that it may not exactly be safe to take them into certain situations. And now in the United States, certain states, here I have a tracker that is put out by the ACLU. There are currently 490, almost 500 anti-trans or anti-LGBT bills. They're not laws yet, but there are 490 different pieces of legislation moving through the various states of the United States right now. There's actually, according to the ACLU, we have 4 states that don't have some legislation being pushed. Minnesota, Illinois, New York, Delaware, and then our non-state of Puerto Rico are the only 5 places in the United States where there isn't some legislation being pushed that tries to marginalize a vast group of our population. And to me, that's not oneness.
No.
That is not oneness at all. And I know I have a grandchild who's trans. I have, members of my congregation who are trans, and I know a whole lot of people who identify in a way that is different than myself.
Right.
And to exclude is, that to me is a criminal act. And in Canada, we do have a bill that was passed in 2017 that assures the rights of transgender people. And we still have an uprising from the belly of the beast, basically, of people going, this is against women's rights. This is against. So there is probably as much hatred, misinformation, and chaos going on here in Canada as well. Fortunately, our government has not passed laws, but I think the safety of trans community is really what we need to concern ourselves with. These people need to be protected. And how we do that is going to be conversations like this to raise awareness.
Yep.
If somebody's born in the wrong body, who am I to say what's right or what isn't right? My daughter goes to school with fabulous young person who,
Mhm.
when they came out as trans, I went, yeah. Like I wasn't surprised. It's like I always knew at some level that they were, misaligned in that body. And so it's like, how do we begin to share information that allows people to come to understand what's going on rather than to make assumptions and to listen to falsehoods and to get on the hate machine? That's,
Yeah.
Yeah. And something you said, Robert, that the fear is, what people hide behind. They hide behind those comments, like, I have no problem with transgender people as long as my tax dollars are not going to support them in any way, right? And I mean, that is really saying I do have a problem. I just don't want to say I have a problem. I'm saying it in a different way. Um, and so what it makes me think about is how we other people, when we're afraid, when we're ignorant, and we don't understand things, we create that separation, because of fear. And so I don't know what the answer is, because why should it matter? Like, why should it matter to anybody except the person and the people that are their family and friends? Why should it be anybody else's business?
Exactly. Exactly. I have long believed and professed and taught that as long as you're not hurting anybody, right? If you're hurting my family, if you're in some way, either mentally, emotionally, physically injuring someone, aggressively attacking people, that's no, we can't go there.
Yeah.
But otherwise, who am I to say who you should love? And truthfully, let's turn this on its head. I have no right to tell people that their conservative values or their quote family values are wrong. But what I do have a right to say is that the way you live those values is hurting people.
Exactly.
The way you live those values are attacking and causing people, well, in many times, physical pain.
Yeah.
It's I don't like to mix issues sometimes, but I'm afraid at times that the next round of lynching in America is going to be that will be against trans people, against people of LGBT culture, and it we have a really bad habit, and you said it, Cheryl, of othering people, of making them the other rather than saying, hey, you're my brother, my sister, or, well, let's just call you my sibling. How about that? Right? There are so many ways we can respect people by not assuming that their body type or the pitch of their voice or how they wear their hair defines who they are.
Yeah.
The what jumps into my head is women of color have been fighting this forever with I'm not my hair. They have music about it. They have books about it. I'm not my hair. And for trans, I think it's I'm not my dress. I'm not defined by what I'm wearing. We're letting people be people.
Yeah, exactly. And like Shay says, it's not anybody's business. Just let me go back up. It's she says it's not anyone's business, it's God's business. Everyone is a unique expression of God. And I mean, that's what we believe in New Thought. We are unique expressions of one experiencing ourselves as it. And that means every single one of us, every single thing is a unique expression of that. And it's just I don't know. It's like, how do you?
And because of the the othering or all of this, the mental health issues, suicide
Yeah.
in the trans community is double what it would be elsewhere. And I think that's another consideration is as we basically tell people you're wrong and bad for being you, it creates a real feeling of separation, of aloneness, of, who am I to think that, I get to, it becomes hard to live.
Yeah.
It's like I'm in the wrong skin and you're telling me that's bad and wrong. And I think we really have to begin to look at, the whole idea of this world that we live in is one entity, it's one thing. And how I think into it affects all of it. And
Yeah.
so we want to really start checking in with how we treat one another. I remember the first trans person I knew was in the 80s. I worked for the Calgary Herald in Calgary, Alberta, and one of the gentlemen there had his full change to a woman and came back to work in the 80s.
Wow.
And I thought, whoa, she is so brave. But some of the women, they would go into the bathroom, and if she came in, they'd run and leave, going, oh, I'm not having a man in here. This is not a man. This is a woman. And eventually she had to leave the employment of the Herald because she couldn't exist in the hate
Environment.
that was being created.
Yep. So I have a quick question because I have never in my life been accosted or harassed by a gay man in a men's bathroom. Have either of you ever been harassed or accosted by a trans man or even another woman
Or a lesbian woman. Yeah.
or a lesbian in a public bathroom?
Never.
Never.
I can't find anybody.
Yeah.
I've been asking all kinds of people for a few years now. I can't find anybody. I can't find any evidence.
Yeah.
That, and what I know from my teen is, and he's trans male, and he uses men's bathrooms.
Of course.
And when we travel,
that's smart.
Right, because I think there's more of a likelihood for a trans person to be accosted or harassed in a public bathroom than there is for, quote, a cisgendered person to be accosted or harassed. It's a non-issue. These things don't happen.
Yeah.
Everybody just wants to go in peace. I just want to go in, get done with what I got to get done with my business and get out. I'm not there. Right. I really believe that there are those that want to make an issue out of any perceived slight when there isn't any. And the whole drag issue right now is exactly that as well.
It is.
I've never met a drag queen that is trying to groom little boys or girls into a gay lifestyle. They just want to do what they're doing and be left to their own means and their own expression.
And we've been noticing here, there's a number of libraries that will have drag queens come in and read to the children and stuff. And this is creating a huge issue here where people are standing outside of these libraries and cursing and swearing and telling people, don't take your children in there. It's evil, bad, whatever. And I'm thinking, you're harming the child by standing outside with your hatred more so than the person who's inside reading a book to them. Like, that's just fun.
And then when the library staff comes out and confronts those people, they film it, they put it on YouTube, and they claim the victim that, look how the left is abusing us. Look at how these people are attacking us for having our free speech. Like, yeah, and your free speech, I'm going to come back to my main point, is hurting people.
Exactly.
A drag queen reading a story is not hurting anybody.
Exactly.
But a guy standing outside the library with a video camera and a gun on his hip, yelling about how these people are evil and so on and so forth, that is hurting people.
Yeah, that's harming children, adults, and it's really causing harm in the drag community, which, I don't understand any of this hate. How much do we have to hate our own self to project it onto others? And I think
Mhm.
that's what it comes down to is I hate on others because I hate me,
Right.
not because
Yeah.
not because I think I'm great. It's like I'm projecting any of my insecurities to diminish someone else in my eyes in the hopes that it raises me. And the
Yeah.
truth is that all of us are created unique and special. We're all children of this one infinite universe. And I'll tell you, it's time for us to create some big time change.
Yes, absolutely. And a moment ago, Fiona said that othering is baked into the experience of being human, and
Yeah.
that is, I believe, one of the great callings and one of the great opportunities for new thought
Mhm.
Yeah.
for spiritual folk out there to stand up and say, "Wait a minute." That's not what we believe, and that's not what we're going to teach. And so, how do I go out into the world and show my alliance and show that this is not where we're going in the world? These
Mhm.
these really are antiquated beliefs that are showing their face to once and for all be excised from the human consciousness.
Yeah.
We have to continue to stand on our foundation of oneness.
Yeah.
Recently, I was invited by a group, um, really unique group of people, and they want to do church a little different, and so they're doing a Saturday night thing, and it's mostly music, and they even say heavy on the music, light on the talk, and I got invited to do the talk on the Mother's Day celebration.
Mhm.
Now, they've also invited a female minister to provide the talk for the Father's Day celebration coming up in a few weeks.
Mhm.
So, and they asked me to come in and do this. And the whole talk is embracing the divine feminine. And so I wore a skirt.
Nice.
I wore a skirt. I wore a t-shirt, a tie-dye t-shirt, and I actually had a women's cut jacket that I wore that night.
Mhm.
So let's be truthful. Women's clothing is so much cooler and so much more fun and so much like I
So
started
many
wearing,
more choices.
I started wearing skirts a long time ago just because they're more comfortable on a hot summer day and everything else that and I find skirts with pockets, by the way. So
Yes, those are the best.
I know how important that is. And what I realized is I'm in liberal Colorado. I'm in a
Mhm.
liberal community. Not one person gave me any grief.
Yeah.
Right? I'm cisgendered male and proud of that.
Mhm.
Proud of my relationship with my wife and my kids, and I felt it was necessary to be able. What does it look like if I show up wearing a three-piece suit to talk about the embracing the divine feminine?
Mhm.
Yeah.
I have my feminine side as well. I have those aspects within me, and I know so many women that are willing to express their male self, their male uh, inner male into the divine male when it's appropriate, when it's necessary, when it feels right.
Yeah.
We're back to that same piece of we've got to let people be who they are
Mhm. Mhm.
because who they are is important to the evolution of human consciousness.
Exactly. Yeah.
You're not contributing if all you're doing is trying to stay safe from being attacked, if all you're doing is trying to stay under the radar so that you're not harassed for simply trying to be who you inside you know who you are. And not
Mhm.
one of us can tell anybody else who they are. Every one of us knows exactly who we are inside. And I believe we're looking for ways to express that. The New Thought movement is an avenue, I believe, through which we have to embrace that and actually promote
Mm.
people being who they really came here to be.
Mhm.
Yeah. And that's exactly why I created the Joy Show on Fridays. There's just one you.
Mhm.
And I had a transgender male on who is a cop here in Toronto. And,
Oh, wow.
he's, yeah, exactly, right? And he has the, the rainbow flag on his uniform as part of his uniform.
Wow.
And, I think it's just important that we find a way to be accepting of one another, but it starts with accepting ourselves. If we can't accept ourselves, we're not going to accept anybody else. And that's part of the journey. Well, we're going to take a little commercial break. You're watching Spirit Cafe here on the New Thought Media Network. So don't go away. We're going to be right back with our founder, Reverend Robert.
New Thought Media Network is on the rise. We're looking to grow with you. Do you have technical media experience or perhaps a desire to learn? Are you willing to volunteer your precious time and attention? We share this message to benefit all. If you possess a computer with a camera and a microphone, we will share our knowledge with you. Behind the scenes or being the star, let us bless our one. Contact us at info@ntmedia.org.
Well, welcome back to Spirit Cafe. We're talking about trans rights or lack of, and things that we might do to help shift that. And we've got the wonderful, remarkable Reverend Robert here, and of course, my beautiful co-host, Cheryl, just sharing a conversation about what's right and how do we begin to shift consciousness. I remember a member of our ministry who arrived at convention a few years ago, dressed as a woman, and not received particularly well at the time. And this would have been maybe 2009, 2010, something like that. And I was really disappointed with the conversations I heard from the ministers of religious science when this particular minister came in looking absolutely gorgeous. Obviously, this is who she is. And I'm not going to mention any names because she has decided it was too hard to live as herself and has gone back to dressing.
Interesting, right? That even in our own midst, the people that are studying New Thought and professing to live it, maybe need to really look at that. One of the things I was thinking, Reverend Robert, you said earlier something about, these things are coming up again to hopefully be dealt with once and for all. And I really do believe that this is a huge time of shift and change, and that these things are coming up again because they've been under the surface, and what we thought was our reality really wasn't. And so they do need to be addressed. And so it's an opportunity. In New Thought, we talk about that. We talk about the things that create resistance, the things that rear their heads are opportunities for spiritual growth, for expanding our consciousness. And I'm thinking about something I read somewhere, and I don't know where because I'm reading so many books at the same time. is that friction is necessary to create the best outcome for all. And so it makes me think of a pearl, right? The sand in a clam that creates friction and that is, rubbing against itself all the time creates a pearl. So there's hope here that, at the end of the day, hopefully, we will actually grow from these issues. And the way we do that is one person at a time. And like you said, it's not just about being allies, it's about actively participating in having a voice, where it can be heard, where it can be seen, so that others can join in and do the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I so agree with you. And I've noticed recently, I've been in a number of conversations, and when I say recently, I mean the last couple of years now. Over the last couple of years, I've been in a number of conversations where ministers from within the New Thought movement are, number one, being much more open
Yes.
about we are evolving. There is still a predominant culture within New Thought that wants us to remain what we were in the 50s and the 60s. And in that time, New Thought needed to be a bridge for those, let's say, escaping Christianity.
Yeah.
New Thought served as a bridge for those that were becoming disillusioned with the Christian traditions and wanted to find something more empowering, something different. And New Thought was able to serve in that way.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, I think we got stuck there. And people began to think that was the only way to do New Thought. We come together on Sundays, we sit down, we pray, you put some money in the basket. Maybe you like the talk, maybe you don't, but it doesn't really matter because you're locked in, you're now part of this community. And God forbid if you went down the road to the Unity Church, or God forbid if you went up the road to the Religious Science Church, or any of that kind of stuff. And we got locked into this perspective that there's only one way to do this.
Mm-hmm.
New Thought, by its very, very basics, is an evolutionary teaching.
Mm-hmm.
And sorry, I'm trying to catch what Shay is saying here as well at the same time. But New Thought is ultimately a place for us to embrace the evolution of human consciousness. And so right now, I think we need to be that bridge, not for escaping Christians or those fleeing the Christian belief, but those that are feeling oppressed and feeling cast aside by society as a whole.
Yeah.
And that was, I was really upset in the ways that we didn't embrace the Black Lives Matter movement.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, exactly.
And we're doing it again. Now we're doing a little bit better this time. And I'm talking about New Thought, not the general society. In New Thought, we're doing it a little bit better when it comes to trans rights. CSL did feature a trans female on the stage of the February 2022 conference in Palm Springs. Gabrielle Claiborne was one of our keynote speakers at that conference, and she is a transgender woman. And we're doing a little bit better, but there are times when it feels like we need the old culture to age out.
Mm.
And that might be true. That might be true. I noticed in our last convention, which was just a couple months ago, that the inclusiveness of it seemed so much better than previous conventions I had attended. And I was still surprised when people expressed their irritation at having to listen to Spanish and English going back and forth. And, I thought,
what do you think Spanish speakers have been doing for decades? And we can't deal with it for a couple of days?
And you know what? It was only a few minutes because it was when the translations weren't coming up on the screen the way they were supposed to. So it was merely a few minutes, and the irritation was quite, and so we're talking about diversity, we're talking about inclusion, but then when it inconveniences us, which it will sometimes,
Absolutely.
we're reacting like my rights are being violated. I think we have to just take a moment, take a pause, and consider another person's experience. We've had Spanish speaking people in the New Thought movement for a long time, and we have absolutely forced them to listen to English everything. And now we're moving that. Now we got to get the French in there, which we're not quite there yet. My family is Francophone. I'm not, but my husband and daughter are. And, finding French material can be a little bit more challenging, especially in North America. So we've got some work to do when it comes to the idea of oneness. We talk a good talk.
Yes.
And I think we need to put our feet to the ground and go, where does the rubber hit the road? And are we willing to check ourselves every moment?
Yep.
And go, am I being inclusive? I'm
Yeah.
teaching oneness. Am I really being that?
Yes.
And how are we showing up? How are we doing that, right? I like what Shay says, and she's talking about, the vibration, the high vibrational frequencies of love, acceptance, inclusion, and so on from the real teachings of Jesus. And what were they, right? Jesus came here to show us who we are, to show us how to live and what we can do and how we could be just as he did and as he was. And so if we did live by those teachings, oh my goodness, can you imagine by the real teachings, what a wonderful world this would be.
Exactly. And Fiona was talking about praying in French, like raise a timid hand to pray in French. It's like, yes, 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 pray in French. I think we're on a journey of really kind of, sifting the sands a little bit to try and wake ourselves up. And I think the idea of really sort of pushing the boundaries, which is what I hope we do on this show as much as possible, is to talk about the ways in which we ourselves are not meeting the challenge of today's society and how we can become real advocates for human rights. I noticed a year ago at the Unity Convention, I was irritating people by either being too slow or trying to get through the crowds. And I thought, wow, we're a bunch of new thought ministers, practitioners, licensed teachers, and we're annoyed because somebody has a disability. Like, I'm just...
And to me, that's malpractice.
Yeah.
It is malpractice.
Right? As ministers, practitioners, as licensed Unity teachers, we're not required to take out malpractice insurance. Thank you. I'm happy for that. But I got a sister-in-law who's a doctor, and I know all about it, right?
Oh,
So,
yes.
and I hear about it. And however, that's malpractice,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of that I see. And again, to me, that is it points to part of the fear. It points to holding on to the glory days, if you will, holding on to how it's always been. And we lose sight that this is an evolutionary teaching, and that means we have to evolve with it. It would appall me to overhear some of the things that were probably said about you at that convention, because you're using something to support you in being there and being a part of it. Now, I'm not going to call people out by name either. And we are making that change. We are making that change. For the longest time, the term was, and I think we've used it here, right, was diversity and inclusion.
Yeah.
Diversity, equity, and inclusion.
And now in the last handful of years, we've started adding that word equity. Exactly, Cheryl. So it really is about diversity and equity and inclusion.
Right.
We have to find a way to let people that well, let's just say it, that aren't white,
Yeah.
or aren't straight white,
Yeah.
aren't straight white Christian Americans. We have to find our way to say, I love you too.
Yeah.
I honor you too. I respect who you are, and I'm not going to assume this is a phase or something you're going through or an experiment or any of that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, over the last 10 years, it's been pretty acceptable for men to not wear a tie.
Mm-hmm.
I still like wearing ties, and I wear them on occasion, and sometimes I don't wear a tie on a Sunday morning, but it became acceptable for men to not wear a tie.
Mm-hmm.
So why is it so unacceptable for me to wear a skirt or something a little frilly or maybe a little lacy or whatever it might be?
Pink or
Pink, yes.
men have been wearing kilts in Scotland forever. And nobody's laughing at those guys.
Exactly.
Early Scotsmen.
And
yeah.
And again, I think this is New Thought's greatest opportunity.
I do too.
Is to lead by example.
Yeah.
I'm going to be in Florida in July for a couple of weeks.
Wow.
Right. And I do plan on saying gay. Let's put it that way. I plan on using that word. I plan on, and I have to clear this with the communities that I'm working with as well. But I think that's the place we need to go.
Yeah.
And I was starting this a little earlier. Ministers are moving to Florida, and I heard one of them say she's planning to move her entire ministry to Florida because that's where the work most needs to be done right now.
Yeah.
That is, if you look at the United States, Texas is pretty close behind. Right now, there are in Florida alone, there are 10 anti-LGBTQ pieces of legislation. In Texas, it's 53. Right.
Wow.
So if you're in Texas, you need to get vocal and get mobilized in the New Thought movement that we're not going to stand for this anymore. If you're in Florida, we need to be able to stand up and say we're not going to do this anymore. Mm-hmm. So I want to check with these communities before they happen, but I'm actually considering doing my Sunday presentation in drag.
I like it.
And
that would be awesome.
One, to make the point, yeah, it's a little scary what happens if somebody in that audience is more of that conservative bent, if you will. But I think it's time we actually make that stand. And I want to be clear. There's a lot of, if you look at the news cycles these days, every day there's another person being revealed for their hypocrisy because they did drag at one point or time or another in their lives.
Yeah.
And the thing I keep seeing is these people do this. I will call out Rudy Giuliani. Let's do that. Right. Yeah. There's a lot of instances of him in drag. Mm-hmm. Every one of those was to make fun of people. Yeah. It was a joke. It was putting people down. It was making fun of people. It was for the laugh track. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think it's time if for male ministers in
well, so he says though, Robert, maybe he enjoyed it.
Well, yeah, he might have.
Hiding behind that, right?
Yeah,
hiding behind the joke, but really,
yeah.
And so, is that a case where Giuliani can't be himself? Maybe. Is it a place where he's just putting down another group? Maybe. We don't really know. Again, I can't know what anybody is truly feeling inside around how they are and who they are and how they represent.
Yeah.
But I think the time is here for people to show up and say, I'm going to be in drag, not to make fun of you, but to stand in solidarity with people.
Yes.
I would love to see New Thought go to Kentucky for Pride this year.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in Florida, they have almost outlawed Pride celebrations. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens this coming year in Florida, because the legislation that has been passed can be interpreted that any representation is illegal and can end up not just in a ticket, but end up in jail.
Right.
I would love to see 1,000 New Thought ministers show up in Nashville and say, this country doesn't believe in what you're doing to people. And I know there's more than enough good people in Florida and in Kentucky and in Tennessee and in all these different places, Texas, that don't want this.
Yeah.
But it's being pushed down their throat by old white guys in charge.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that has to change. And that's what I'm looking forward to with the next generation that are coming up, who are now eligible to vote, that they're going to begin to shift that train, I'm hoping, and putting it on a new track, because there's something, when you look at, I don't know the US Constitution very well, but I do know there's something in there about freedom of speech and human rights and stuff. There's some stuff in there about that. And it's being trampled on with women, with trans, with LGBT, with the drag community. It's like people are being trounced on by your cisgender white male.
Yep.
Well, and when that constitution was written, human rights meant male rights, white male rights.
Right, because women weren't yet actually considered. We were just chatting.
And neither were people of color.
Of course not. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm not sure if our listeners understand why we keep referring to Florida. And this morning I saw this article: largest U.S. gay rights group issues Florida travel advisory. And it's saying that the largest LGBTQ rights organization in the U.S. joined other civil rights organizations Tuesday, this was yesterday, in issuing a travel advisory for Florida, warning that newly passed laws and policies may pose risks to minorities, immigrants, and gay travelers.
Wow.
So we're on the verge of bringing back the Green Book. And for those that don't know, the Green Book was a travel guide for people of color during the Jim Crow era, where you needed to know where the safe place to stay for the night was and which towns not to travel in after dark. And we're on the verge of that again for LGBTQ because of who you love.
Wow.
Well, and Fiona's saying that in Western Europe, they're being advised to not travel to red states.
Wow. Interesting.
And here's the thing, right? Prayer is important. Prayer, it works. And in this case, I feel we're too far down the line to rely on the slow boat of prayer, if you will. It takes a long time to change the consciousness of a country, of a state, of even a city. And we've got to get about doing that work. Now, we're going to be very clear here. We do not advocate who to vote for, and we do not tell you what to vote for or how to vote, but we can be very clear that it's important for us to vote. And if anybody here by chance is listening under the age of 30, well, I'm going to drop a link in the chat box for you because we want you to run for something.
Yes.
Now, this is an organization here in the United States. It is focused towards those under the age of 30, and it is designed to help people get involved at the local, state, and national level in the political discourse, in the political process. And they're a very progressive organization. They're not looking to keep the old in and keep doing the same old thing that we've been doing, but to move forward and support youth, younger people in getting involved and running for something.
Yes.
Because if we don't, and I never remember if it was Plato or Socrates, but one of the two of them said that to ignore politics is to be ruled by lesser men.
Yeah,
To
absolutely.
wow.
Wow.
That that's going on, we will be ruled by those with a lesser consciousness than ourselves. So we do need a new thought political action committee, if you will.
Mhm.
I agree.
We've got new thoughters in Hollywood, that's for sure. We've got new thoughters in all kinds of industry. The coaching industry is overrun with people teaching new thought right now without a church, without a religious doctrine. It's time, I believe, for us. And I'm a little, I would be the worst guy. Middle-aged white guy gets like, I'm going to have all kinds of, but the younger kids today, the young adults, those just getting their feet under them, run for something.
Mhm.
Yes.
And
Yes.
you may find that's one of the quicker ways to change the world.
Yeah, I think that's really important that our youth get involved. My daughter just turned 18, so she'll be able to vote. We have a mayor election coming up, and so she'll be able to vote in that for the first time. And I think it's really important that young people decide what really matters to them, what's really important, and to ensure that they either run for something or they vote for, not for who mom or dad or whoever says you're supposed to vote for, but rather they research the candidates, they get a sense of who's running, what they stand for, and they vote with their consciousness. I think that is so important. It's the way I've been voting for a long time. And I think that to me is become informed, find out what's going on, and stand up for human rights.
Mhm.
Yes.
Not having them affects all of us.
Yes.
Absolutely.
All of us, for sure.
And I just want to say kudo to Marianne Williamson. Yeah, I mean, she tried the last election and she's put herself forward again this election. And, it doesn't matter how far she gets, she's using her voice to speak out and to speak to lots of people, like hundreds and I hope thousands of people, to at least have a different perspective on things.
Yep. Again, we're not telling you who to vote for. But go check out what Marianne's doing, because I thought the last cycle, okay, can she win? I don't know. Going up against the Democratic establishment, if you will, and I thought at that time, how cool would it be if Joe Biden had named her the Secretary of Peace? And this is an old idea by Dennis Kucinich, who I liked a long time back too now, to develop a cabinet level position, a Department of Peace.
Yes.
We've got a Department of War. We've got a department of every other thing out there. Let's have a Department of Peace, and let's put Marianne in that place so that she can and affect that. And this year it seems to be even tougher for her because she's going up directly against an old white guy. It's within the party. So the Democratic Party in the United States has already announced they're not going to hold presidential primaries. They're not going to hold debates. They're not going to give her really any help whatsoever in getting her voice heard. Now, the rest of us can help get her voice heard. Does that make her a viable candidate? I can't answer that. But what I can answer is, if she keeps doing what she's doing, she's going to inspire younger people to get involved. And sooner or later, somebody's going to have to take her seriously.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
that might mean a Department of Peace or an appointment to Health and Human Services or so I applaud her for being willing really to put herself into a dangerous, if you will, situation by professing to push forward some new views, and not even new views, just to really champion a new thought perspective in politics.
Yeah, I agree.
A
Absolutely.
really interesting perspective, for sure. I was surprised last time when I heard she was putting herself forward. I thought, wow, good on you. And I think that's what we're looking for is people who will stand for what they believe in and speak truth to stupid.
Yeah. Yeah.
You have to have courage, and you have to have great dedication and commitment.
Yes.
And, you know, my hope is that more people like that will come forward at the same time, so that it's a movement that grows,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and eventually there'll be that tipping point.
Mhm.
And it takes a village, right? It takes all of us to participate in some way.
And I think sometimes we forget where the power really lies. You know, we've got it in our heads the power is the president or the senators or the governors, but there's no power there. That's an individual. The power is in the masses. It's like when we rise up together, we begin to create, we can create great change, but it has to come from the base. And unfortunately, because of the way people have been suppressed, the othering that we were talking about earlier, people are reluctant to go up against the perceived power of
Right.
current
Suppressed and conditioned, and
conditioning, for sure.
all
Yeah.
those things. Yeah.
And this
Yeah.
would be a whole nother episode because we don't have time today, folks. But I'm also pretty clear that the time is now, the time is near for a new constitutional convention in the United States. I think the time has arrived where after 200 plus years, we've got a pretty good idea of what's working and what's not, and to sit down and create something different, create the next wave, if you will. I'm not going to even believe that it would be easy, but the American political system is broken because I can't. There comes a certain point where it would be irresponsible. It would be malpractice to vote for a third party candidate or a marginalized candidate, because the prospect of Donald J. Trump ending up in that office again here in the United States is far too dangerous. And when it comes right down to it, I'm going to vote with who I think has the best chance to defeat Donald, rather than vote with who I think would be the best president. And that is incredibly, it points directly at the fact that the system is broken and we need to start doing it differently. I know that, I know politics would be different, is different up in Canada and how it all works. And maybe you can have me back sometime. We can dig into that subject for a while, but that's a whole other story, folks. We'll cover it another time.
Well, and Robert, I will say that in Canada, we do have people who vote strategically. They don't vote for the party that they like, but they vote strategically so that the party they don't like doesn't get as many votes. So it's no different in that respect, right? And I think politics has to change the world over. It's not just the United States.
Yeah, I agree. Big change is coming, and it's definitely time. I know in Canada we have a lot of division here as well, and we just don't have a party ready that can actually come up from the belly, so to speak, to create mass change. So we are stuck with kind of the two parties that
seesaw.
Really, it's a seesaw.
Yeah.
No change happens where they're concerned.
And if we all just came together in the middle, everything would be fine, right?
Exactly.
Get off the seesaw, get together in the middle in oneness, and
ta-da! All will be well.
We're creating a T-shirt that a buddy of mine gave me the phrase, and it says, "Love more, and the world will be okay."
Yeah,
I love that.
Love it.
I love it.
I want one.
Okay.
Yeah, me too. I have it on my wrist, but I'll take another. Thank you for being here, Reverend Robert. Thank you for this network. It is truly brilliant. Thank you, Cheryl, my beloved sister, and to everybody who's watching. This has been a blessing, and be sure to donate to the New Thought Media Network. Let's keep this baby going and growing, and thank you all. We'll be back next week. Bye for now.
Thank you. Bye now.
Thank you, Robert. Bye.
On behalf of everyone at New Thought Media Network, thank you
for being a member of our virtual family. Your financial contributions help share the New Thought message with people from around the world. Please visit and contribute at www.ntmedia.org/donate. New Thought Media Network. Come be you. And please like, share, and subscribe. Until next time, peace and blessings.